different parts of the globe, different parts of India. Thank you so much. This is Vijeta here from Thai Bangalore. We are absolutely delighted that all of you are here and we can all learn together. So just want to keep it very simple that this is something that we're going to be doing as series. As you can see, it's going to be about startup growth. I can tell you this from personal experience that Aditya is someone who deeply cares and he wants to see startups in India all over the world grow and of course leverage everything that HubSpot has to offer. And two of the really fantastic resources that we have today, Aditya himself, who's from Singapore, and he's got a very deep focus on the India market, and his colleague Anna Gordon, who sits out of UK in Dublin, Ireland. So they're going to be talking about growth, about partnerships, and how various opportunities are there. And listen, what we will be doing is, apart from this 3 to 4 session that we're doing, informal networking, let's talk to each other, let's converse, let's learn, and it's all about growth. So with this, I would hand over to Aditya and Anna. Thank you so much for taking time out for us, and looking forward to learn a lot. Thank you so much. Cheers. Over to you, Aditya.
Thanks, Vijeta. You're always very kind, but thanks so much for that introduction. We're going to kick things off. So for people on this call, we have almost about a 40 member team strong and growing. I'm going to quickly just help our audience set some context on what we're trying to cover over the next 60 minutes. So, you have the ability to be able to maximize your time and everything in terms of learning and engagement and so on. We're going to cover a bunch of things today. So Anna is joining us from Dublin. I'll let Anna intro herself, but she's going to be helping us kick off the session today with the agenda. I'm going to come in between and take on the rest. And just in terms of housekeeping, I think a couple of things that you can start, putting your questions in the chat. One of the ways we want to make these sessions a lot more engaging. So, if you'd seen my reminder, this is absolutely not more than 40% of the sessions going to be content heavy, and we're going to get into, probably live case studies, maybe pick up a few startup websites, see how much help and advice we can give, so that when you go back, you have something substantial to actually improve or do something better to help accelerate revenues. So that's the whole idea. When you're putting in your questions, I think the best way that we found it to be helpful is have your domain name so that we can pull it up if we need to, just for some reference and try to understand what ventures you're building and where's your question and what's the context. And then you can have your question similar to what you see on your screen, right? I'll hand this over to Anna, so, who's joining us from Dublin to kick us off. Anna, over to you.
Thanks, Aditya. I'll just share my screen there. If you stop screen sharing, thank you. So I'll just share that and then I'll introduce myself. So thank you everyone for joining. I know it's coming close to the holidays. So so as Aditya mentioned, so I'm on Aditya's team covering UK and Ireland. So I'm based over in Dublin. So I manage partnerships with our UK accelerators, VCs, incubators, and we help their startups to grow. So yeah, really excited to be here today. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about today, Aditya gave a little bit of a prelude to it. So we're going to be focusing on building your sales process and learning best practices of inbound selling, understanding change in the buyer's experience and how to build trust, implementing some best practices on a CRM, so reselling with insights and data, and building a CRM-powered sales and marketing stack. So I'm going to be focusing on the first bit initially in terms of that sales piece. So just kind of an introduction to this, and this is kind of going to be a key theme that we're going to hit on throughout today. So really today's most disruptive startups are winning on customer experience. So when we think about this buyer's journey, which I'll go into a bit more detail lately, where someone comes in being anonymous, knowing nothing about your product or service, hopefully becomes a prospect, converts to a customer, and then becomes a promoter or like evangelist of your product or service. And we have the marketing, sales, service team in line with that. But really, that buyer's journey is messy. People might come in at different stages, and making sure that you have the right tech to manage that is really important. So you can see here, having content to be able to attract people to you and engage with people in that buyer's journey, being able to message them, being able to automate that, and being able to report to constantly be improving, and also having that underlying data as well. So these are more rhetorical questions just to kind of sit with you, but have you been cold calling in the past 6 months? Did you enjoy the experience? And how scalable do you reckon that this process is? Whereas, have you conducted a Google search to research a product in the past 6 months? Did you enjoy the process? Did you make a purchase? Have you heard about a product in social media from people that you trust? So really, when we talk about the old playbook here, it's really that kind of that cold calling, reaching out to people without any context, sending what people might perceive to be spammy emails if they're not relevant to them. So the biggest problem with this kind of older playbook of sales is that it fights for people's attention by interrupting them on their day-to-day. It's like, I don't want to get a random call today from something that's totally not relevant to me. I'm not in the mindset, I haven't been researching it. So it's really about reaching out and being helpful and reaching out with context. So I'm getting at here is like the old age thing of like customer is king still stands true today, and even more now, like with, you'd say the C word with the COVID over the last 18 months, like people are on the internet even more researching things. So really buyers are in control. Buyers can find the information they want before they ever engage with someone in your company. Everyone, will be doing Google, looking at reviews, evaluating different options. Buyers have gotten better at blocking out interruptive sales techniques. So like ad blockers, filtering their emails, just blocking numbers and ignoring calls, things like that. And buyers also, and this is an important one as well, is have heightened expectations around the experience of buying. They expect that kind of seamless customer experience. So when we go into this, if these buyers are so important, we really want to be thinking about this. And again, something we'll focus on throughout today is the importance of the customer at the center of everything, and therefore the importance of having and understanding your buyer persona. So some of you may have, of course, created these already, or if not, just a recap. A buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer. Something to note as well is like these can change over time. Like HubSpot had, when we started as an inbound marketing automation platform, we had one buyer persona, which is marketing Mary, and now fast forward today, we have different personas for different lines of our business, for ops, sales, service, etc. So these will change over time. So always worth, I'll share a tool shortly, but always worth going back to the drawing board and thinking about that persona with your team. This is an example as well, which might be kind of a persona for, say, HubSpot for startups. You're thinking about your personas, creating or recreating them. You really want to find out what makes them tick and listing out all the details imaginable. So here's details about growth Gary, his experience with tech, trying and buying stools, why he chooses HubSpot, like personal details as well. What's his experience level? What does he do in college, like education, all of those details like that. So as I said, maybe Aditi, if you want to pop that in the chat, we can share it as a resource after. HubSpot has a really good Make My Persona tool. It has sits out a nice graphic at the end and all that. So definitely encourage you to make that and sit down with like different members of your team. Everyone will have different opinions on it, or could have different opinions on it. It might surprise you. So definitely would encourage you to look at that tool, that Make My Persona tool. So on that kind of that trend, I do want to introduce you to another kind of persona that I'll talk about a little bit here, which is Timmy. So here's the details about Timmy, who I'm going to talk about. Again, you've got even more granular detail here: his age, his education, the employee size. So maybe, the organization size. So maybe if you're targeting companies in that 200 to 500 employees range, like mid-market, that's in your target market. His preferred method of communication, job responsibilities, challenges, goals, everything like that. So if you think about Timmy's buying journey and how it's kind of changed over time, so from being, years ago, but also being years ago, how it was very, linear buyer journey, very simplistic with a little bit of marketing at the start, maybe, and loads of sales. Whereas how this has even been accelerated over the last, 18 months to 2 years with COVID and how that has changed. So as I said, the buyer is very much in control. So in this situation, Timmy's doing his own research, and maybe he's looking on LinkedIn, he finds an interesting post, and then maybe finds a blog maybe about your company. He's like, oh, that's interesting. And then he realizes he needs to take action. So he's in this awareness stage. He's realized he has a pain point and he needs to do something about it. And maybe then he reaches out to someone in sales, or he enters that sales process with your company. So really that buyer's journey, rather than being linear, it really ends up looking something like this. It could be even like messier like I had before. But the point is here, even though there is that kind of awareness, consideration, decision stage with the buyer's journey, and the way the customers act today and the things that they expect, the key thing here is that there can be multiple touch points. And it could also be personal to the buyer. So one person might come in through a social media ad and find out about your company there. Someone else might engage through a webinar or something like that. Sorry, Dita, did you want to come in? Oh, I thought you were.
Yeah.
You were.
Sorry,
I thought you looked like you're going to ask a question.
So one of the things that, Anna, that we typically, most of the times we end up when we speak to startups and so on, people find it really difficult to get to the customer's journey. I'm not sure how many of us on this call today have this difficulty, but we just want to take a moment and just to ask our audience to understand, like, do people on this call today have a good understanding about this customer's journey? Do you face a particular challenge? We'll just pause here for 30 seconds just to see how people feel. Are we confident about this journey? Do we have visibility, or do we don't have visibility into this journey? And in the meantime, Anna, from your experience, you've worked with startups across all stages, right from early to growth stage. What do we really see happening? Like what's really breaking up when people are just interrupting some of this journey and just going right in? Sometimes maybe, my inbox is really full, to be honest, like even it's holiday season.
Yeah.
But I've got like over 110 emails from startups because I typically love, experimenting with their products, especially in the B2B space. But I'm not their persona. So I think something is definitely not right. I'm just being targeted, maybe just, quickly trying to sell, and that just doesn't work. So what do you think is, like, how can we just be a lot more conscious of this approach?
Yeah, definitely. I think, people are quick, like I'm the same, like so many emails, and people are quick to get annoyed about that, especially if they don't think it's personalized to them. Like even if I see, say, I've opted in for, say, ads on Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm almost don't mind getting personalized ad, because then you're almost like, okay, at least that's personalized to me. So I think people do care about that personalization rather than just like automation and mass kind of email sends. And I think if someone called me, like this is what, say, depending on like tools you use, if you're able to reach out with insight, you can really strike when the iron is hot. Like say, if you know that someone has viewed a blog and they're in an awareness stage, you can reach out then and really call them. They're engaging with your content. Or even better, if they're looking at a pricing page, that's a high intent page. You want to call them and engage with them at that stage. So it's really reaching out when they're already engaging. Can be really powerful, because they're much more likely to reply, and might be able to like convert them faster as well.
Thanks for that, Anna. I already see some questions here, which I'll try and answer so we can keep moving forward. But for anybody else, like just to get a show of hands, like yes and no, like how many of us have a good visibility on buyer's journey? Like you can visibly see these, and as Anna mentioned, like you have segmentations built on and so on. And if you don't have it, just say no. So when we lead on into the session, we'll try and dive into some of these areas to give you some more perspective and visibility. So all hands of yes. Just put yes in the chat. If you do not have this visibility, that's totally okay. I think we're here to learn, so we have a really great turnout today. So just feel free to say no. If you're confused, if you want to learn how to do this, just say exploring maybe. All right. So Anna, we have the responses coming in. I'll just let you take over again, and I'll come back with some more questions later on.
Sure. Cool. Thanks. So so this buyer's journey. So just to kind of reiterate the point today, it's really not what you sell, It's how you sell and how you go to market. So how you might have the best product in the world, but if you haven't nailed that, start to nail that go to market strategy and really approach buyers, as I said, there kind of with that context. It's much better to focus on the customer and that customer experience. So really our selling motion has to match the way our buyers would like to engage with us. So I'll go into this a bit more detail in a couple of minutes, but that sales process should really be designed around that buyer, those stages, and also even the buying motion. Like, do people want to, is your product one that people should be able to purchase online? Or if you're selling to enterprises, then probably they need to engage with the human in a sales process. So just to really think about that when you're developing that sales process. So I go into this in too much detail, but this is kind of the traditional, marketing and sales funnel, where it's very much sees customers as kind of the output of that. But what we really want to get at today is rather than this better product era, with customers as the output of that funnel, we're moving in. We have moved into this kind of this better experience era, where customer experience wins, where customers are at the center, helping you grow. So this is kind of the flywheel model the HubSpot uses as part of our inbound methodology, where that orange kind of circle you see there, again, customers at the center helping you grow and aligning all of your customer facing teams around that. So that attract, marketing, engage, sales, delight, services, and how they can all in turn really help your customers grow, and how customers can become a referral engine for you as well. I won't go into that too much. So how can we improve our sales process? So I'm going to talk a little bit about creating an inbound sales process. So the first kind of step, I guess, in transforming to an inbound sales model is to understand the way your customers buy your product or service. So as I was saying there, if you're creating or improving your sales process, it's not necessarily about you. You also want to be thinking about your buyers and how they want to engage. That's really key, because buyers don't really want to be prospected, demoed, or closed in your sales process. They want to be educated, supported, and guided through their buying process. And this is really what inbound is all about. It's providing content, being helpful, really reaching out with that context and being like a helpful advisor rather than that hard sales. So an outdated sales process basically has three parts. It's kind of this thing of like always be closing, just very focused on yourself, not the vendor, not the buyer. And that was very much, prospect, demo, close. Where's the buyer in that? So really with the inbound sales strategy, there's kind of 4 stages as we see here. So identify, so this is kind of the stage where you're doing your research, identifying potential prospects. Then kind of the connect phase, where you have that initial kind of call with the prospect, really understanding their pain points, their goals, being curious in the stage, like again, not making it about you, trying not to start the conversation with a hard sell on your product, really asking them in that beginning stage about them as a company, what makes them tick, being genuinely curious there. The explore phase, exploring this in more detail, starting to present your product. And then the advise stage as well is more like the demo stage and how your product addresses their unique challenges. I won't go into this in too much detail. I'm going to focus a little bit on the connect phase, but we will share more resources on that. In that connect phase, and I'd say this is probably one of the most, especially as a startup, but for any company, one of the most important stages, because you want to be qualifying those deals early on. You don't want to be started because you might want to go after loads of companies, but if they're not your persona, not your target market, or maybe like just the timing's not right for them, you want to be qualifying that out early on. So I know there's also other kind of frameworks like BANT. In HubSpot, we use GPCT. So before, one of our reps would maybe, commit to a big demo, it could be a personalized demo, could take a lot of their time. They want to be jumping on and in that initial kind of connect, kind of qualifying call and asking these questions. So with GPCT, some of you might be familiar with this. If not, again, a refresher. So asking about their goals and asking about the prospect's goals. So what are your goals? What is your priority? What are you responsible for? Plans. How are you planning on doing what? What did you do last year? Challenges. Again, it's trying to figure out what makes that persona tick. So what are your challenges? What hurdles will come in the way of achieving those? And timeline, again, a really important one, is to know when do you need to achieve this goal? When do you need to eliminate this challenge? And just is there any sense of actual urgency on their side or not? So when you think about as well, improving your current sales process, if you already have one, or maybe you've started to create one, or even if not, even just looking at past deals and really analyzing your current processes. So looking at what's working and not working, walking through the sales process of the top 10 deals you closed last month. What did the process look like for each? Mapping out your customer's journey. So what are the key touch points you have with prospects? What does the sales team need for that? And defining the exit criteria for each stage. So this is really important. So if something's moving from discovery to demo or whatever, if you're going to give a demo to someone, what do you need from them to get to that stage, or what do you need to get to the pricing and terms stage? Like, what are the different things that the buyer needs to do to be able to move throughout that stages? That's really important. And lastly, again, essentials, measuring those results. So if you've improved on it, or if you're analyzing your processes, can you identify any bottlenecks in that process? So I guess you can do this manually, but you do have some sort of like a reporting software for looking at this. So if you can identify, between like this, there was actually like a really big slowdown between these two stages. So I know that there's a bottleneck in that. I need to be able to improve that by upskilling sales team or educating them, or maybe you need a different kind of software or something like that. Being able to really measure those results and iterate and change upon that is really important. So lastly, before maybe we might do some questions or hand it over to you, Dicha, but really, as you're positioning yourself as that trusted advisor, you really want to build trust throughout that buyer's journey. So in that track stage, that could include, refocusing on your digital presence. What does your website look like, and your unique value proposition? Focusing on personalized outreach. So even if maybe you have a CRM and you got a notification that this person viewed your pricing page, but you still want to do your research on that person before you reach out to them by email or phone. So like looking at their LinkedIn, is there some kind of common connection that you have, or something you can relate to them on, or is there some sort of like a trigger event that you can reach out to them there? So really making it personal to them can really increase those reply rates. Converting, so having clear and meaningful CTAs. That could be if you are reaching out and spending all this time maybe creating a great email sequence, but then you're measuring the results of that sequence and no one's replying. Having actual CTAs in that. So I know like our HubSpot sales reps often, you'd have, it might be book a meeting with me, click here, and things like that as well. Close. So we've already talked about this a bit, but the importance of activity and insights, warm calling. So rather than the cold call, reaching out with those contacts because someone has clicked on your content or has opened your email, or there's, a trigger event as well. So I'm conscious of having time for questions and stuff as well. So Dicha, if you want to ask any initial questions, or I can hand over to you.
No, for sure. I just have one question while you just presented the slide. It's typically, most of the times I think people end up rather creating frictions that we typically talk a lot about, especially even in Teams and in HubSpot. Like what would you say is like two best practices of how can startups reduce friction in the sales process? What would be the best way for startups to reduce just friction in the sales process?
Yeah, I suppose it starts with like being able to, like some of the things I've already mentioned, like being able to have that sales process to begin with, making sure you know how a deal moves throughout the stages. And also just a lot of time that friction might come from not having the right person on the other end of the call. So things like that. Yeah, I don't know if that answers. I think I've covered some of the friction points, but happy to take a follow-up question if that doesn't make sense.
Totally. Thanks, Anna. We'll just open it up to the floor for people who have any questions on this slide or anything
Sure.
else that Anna has just covered, just so that we have a lot more context and we have enough time. So we'll just wait for people for any questions that you might have, so we can
Sure.
bridge that clarity. Absolutely clear on just building out this inbound sales process a lot better. Yeah, and probably I'll just as a reminder for people, the best way to get the most out of this session, especially the later half as well. Like we hope that you can engage as much as possible and ask questions, because typically our content is, I'll probably have another 5-6 more slides today, but that's it. There's less content, but there's if you can ask frictions or anything that you're facing, we'd love to. We're going to keep marketing questions out. So I do see something. But there's one particular question, Anna, that's coming is, what's the best way to influence manufacturing managers who are less social media savvy?
I suppose I wouldn't have like a huge amount of experience in that specific industry, but I guess in any time, just like going back to those basics of understanding that manufacturing persona and knowing where they live. Like, is there some sort of forums that maybe they hang out on? Is there some sort of content that you can engage them with? Like if you're some, like when we think about inbound, a huge part of inbound, again, we're not going to be focusing too much on marketing today, but is really creating that content. So is there some sort of like specific content that would work for the manufacturing company? So as I don't have like specific expertise there, but those would be some of my key points on that.
Cool. Thanks, Anna. We got one more question. I'm happy to take this or open it up as well. On a call, it's difficult to understand the emotions of a customer. Totally, we all can relate that. What's the best way to understand if the person is genuinely interested or just giving hope? Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking on that. It's a good one.
I'll just go in with some thoughts, Anna. So typically, a couple of things, right? Like I think it's not only about calls, right? So whether there are different ways to also understand. One, I would say, before you get on the call, like why are you getting on the call with a customer or a particular prospect? One of the fundamentals I find a lot of people, and I personally have made that mistake at the previous startup that I've worked with for quite a number of years, is jumping on the first discovery call, you name it, or just that call to analyze, right? And then sometimes we get caught in this rut. Is like, is this the right prospect I'm speaking with? Is he serious about? It happens no matter even to folks. But I think one of the ways that you can be a lot more prepared for these calls and hash them out quickly is having them fill some kind of a quick questionnaire before you jump on those calls. At HubSpot, I think our sales team has a pretty in-depth questionnaire before you jump on calls. Like you have so much of resources, help, like you don't need to be jumping on calls with people before you can, when you are not sure that you can actually, help them move through your sales process and so on. So that's number one. Second, if you speak about whether this is a genuine, I'd ask that question back to you. Like, do you have insights, right? Back from Anna's slide is like, if you just look at the attract, convert, close phase, you're typically, if you're jumping on the call, you're typically either in the initial stages or you're trying to, jump on a few calls and maybe negotiate or whatever that might be whenever you are in the buyer's journey. Has your prospect taken some action? Is that why you're on the call? You can use that action to ask more follow-on questions and so on, just to see, how do you set better context so that you don't feel left out, or you just feel a bit more prepared. And, rather you're just in a better position to guide that prospect through the sales process, right? So when you come out of that call, you're a lot more confident and like, is this something that I'm going to pursue? And back to Anna's slide, where you have the GPCT, I'd say when people feel, what Goem just said, not by going too much into that, is because you're just not clear on, goals, plan, challenges, and timelines, that just makes you feel a bit unprepared or unsure about what is likely the outcome and so on. Anna, feel free to add any thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to say that point as well. As much as you can, is there actions that you can kind of map in that sales process that that the buyer can do at a very minimum? Like if they're not willing to do, like we said, like Aditya said, like before that discovery, before that IGA, our sales reps will get prospects to fill in a questionnaire. Or for instance, for HubSpot for Startups applications, we'll get people often to fill in a questionnaire before we jump on a call with them. So if they're not willing at the bare minimum to do some sort of action for you, and they're not willing to take that very minimum amount of time, then that's probably a red flag.
100%. Like I would not, like even in partnerships, to be honest, like if you're not doing the bare minimum, filling in, let's say the basic questionnaires, like I don't jump on the call. Like I would rather decline that call because your time is really important. If you're a founder on this call, if you're just heading your sales teams, like you need to guard your time. That's how, we all think about it. And that's really, really precious, whether in your early days of your venture building or you're scaling and growing. So definitely 100% over that.
Absolutely.
We'll take a few more questions, Anna. How do you go about engaging warm call events without making them annoyed? How much interaction is a good amount of interaction? Okay. Yeah.
Well, what I'd say is I can't remember the exact stats in it, but if you are engaging, like if you're reaching out with that context, like it does take a good while for people to actually, I think it's X amount of emails. I can share the stats after, but people to actually reply. So people might not see it, or they might not be the right person. So I don't know if you have specific numbers, Aditya, but I'd say don't be afraid to keep reaching out by maybe a couple of phone calls, maybe then emails, LinkedIn. But then if you feel like it's too much, then don't be afraid to also reach out to the other, using LinkedIn, or if you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, is a great tool for reaching out to other people in their company. But what I'd say is persist, even though it doesn't sound inboundy, but it is. But reaching out with context, you really do need to have that persistence as well in the sales process to be able to get those results.
No, totally, 100%. And I'd say, specifically when I noticed some of the best sales reps in our teams at HubSpot, like look through the sequences and so on. Some of the sequences, and it also depends on the persona and like what markets you might be timing. So, for example, a lot of startups had said like my drip campaigns in Asia are much larger than drip campaigns in the US because they're targeting two different markets, right? That also comes in from their experience of like how much do I need to follow up, right? And goes back to Anna's point, is like if people are taking actions now. To Kaushik, this was your question. I go back, look into my CRM, look at events, look at triggers, look at some of those cues just to get some more perspective. Is like, what am I doing, and then measure that a little bit backwards and see what's working, what's not, before I craft out those re-engagement strategies and so on. We have a lot of questions coming in, so that's great. We can spend another 3-4 minutes. Okay, so digital presence. What's the right mix? Website, blog, LinkedIn, Facebook. Okay, that's a lot. How many posts, B2B? All right, so Pradeep, I want to simplify this question, right? Back to you, and then you can post it, and then we'll cover this. And as people are posting questions, it's good that if you post your domain name first, then your question. So if I have, if I just want to open it up and give you some context, or we just want to get some context before we answer it, that's very helpful. But for Pradeep, I'll just pose the question back. Where are you getting your maximum revenues from? So tell me that channel today. And then we can help you decode or just share some thoughts is like, what is the right mix? Because right now it's like pretty broad. It's like it's a very deep ocean, like website blogs. You just want perspective on everything. And that's very difficult for us to just narrow down on. I'll cover one more question. How do you maintain boundaries while you're engaging and connecting with a prospect to make a sale? I mean, Sakina, can you dive a little bit more? Like, what do you mean by maintain boundaries when you're engaging or connecting?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure on that. If there's more context, we can cover it now or at the end.
There's one interesting question, probably last one. I will take it for now. How to revive a customer who was hot but has gone cold suddenly? What could be the reason? I'd probably say, just a few thoughts, and feel free to pitch, comment. And when people go cold, I like to think like, did I do something to bring in more friction? And that's what I like to think about sales and marketing processes. And today, it's whole session about sales is, am I improving? Like, what can I do to improve and remove or reduce rather frictions in my processes, right? Because the more frictions you have, fundamentally, you're just, annoying your prospects a lot more, or rather you're trying to upsell or cross-sell or whatever that might be, right? Because, fundamentally, if you're saying that the prospect was hot, let's say you had some cues, they were opening your emails, they were looking at your website, they were in the pricing page, they had 2 calls with you, but went blank, for example. Maybe you do not have a good or a better sense of where they are in the buyer's journey. Maybe, right? They just fell off. You do not know how to get them back because you don't have that perspective. Now, if I had that perspective, I'm not sure whether that perspective is coming out of CRM, whether it's coming out of the email marketing tool or something to tell you that I've done XYZ, which is the effort that you've put. Now I'm seeing a lot of fall off rates, something of that sort. And then I could look at the data and, rather than just my gut feeling and be like, oh, let's pick up the phone, one last try, kind of a thing. So,
I just add to that as well. I suppose it's difficult, but it's already happened, but just backtracking in terms of like improvements for the future. Like I'd say a couple of key things are like, if they have gone cold and you've already invested the time in those calls and stuff, is something like we focus on again a lot in HubSpot. It's like handling those objections up front. Like there could have been something on, maybe if they were in near the close stage, they could have had like a pricing objection, or their timelines weren't what you thought they were. So things like that. And then also, again, if depending on what stage they were at in the buyer's journey or sales process, like, did you always have a next step? Like, had you booked a meeting? Like, again, some of these things are sometimes out of our control, but just moving forward as well. Like there could be some external or internal factor that you don't know about, like a change in the company or something, but just as much as you can, keeping that kind of control in the sales process in terms of objection handling, and next steps can really help as well.
Thanks, Anna. So we're just going to give people a 1-minute break. I'm just going to cover some questions, and then we'll move into the second part of the session. We have about 25 minutes.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Anna, for helping us kick this off. I was just going to give another 1-minute break before we move on to the next one.
Sounds good.
So thanks, Anna. It was super useful. Right? You want us to wait for some more time?
Yeah, Vijay, I'm just going to use another minute to just quickly, instead of typing, quickly give some quick responses to some of these questions, and then we move into the second half. So
done deal.
Yeah,
done deal.
Sure. For folks who are on this call, I hope you're trying to get the most out of this session. So If you have any other questions or something, just keep popping them in. What is a good lead gen HubSpot landing page on your own landing page? I mean, it depends, Ashok. I can't really comment what are you trying to achieve, right? It depends. So if you are using the whole CRM stack and the marketing tools, then you want to just generate your landing pages out of your HubSpot stack. If you just want it to be right, so it really depends like what your end goal is. Like, are you using the tools? Do you understand in and out of what you'd like to achieve, like what your end goal is, and then you can decide. So like building your own, like if you're custom coding a landing page, then that's just probably not the best way out. You want to save time over there. Nida has a question, convert to close, knife.io. So that's great. I thanks Nida for providing that perspective. I'll just open your website, but I'm trying to think through now your question. What are the top 5 reasons that may be happening? Convert to close. We're unable to attract for sure. Okay, now that's very difficult for me to comment what could be going wrong, but I'll share my screen. So
Do you want me to stop here? I'll stop, will I?
Yeah.
Stop share.
Thanks, Anna. Okay. So I have Nida's website. So Nida, thanks for volunteering. You asked me like, what are the top 5 reasons that may be happening we're unable to attract? Now, before I go into making any comments, I think a couple of things, right? So if you have Google Analytics, if you have some heat maps and things like that, just trying to, if you're not able to close, like you have call to actions, right? So you have become a partner, blah, 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 you're taking them to a type form. You have a request a demo, type form, boom. So the first, and this is Nida, so I hope you're here, right? A couple of quick tips. When I see people, diversion. So just going back to my earlier comment is like, if you are creating too much of friction on this first page for me, that's too much for me to absorb, right? You want to be able to convert people quickly and in the easiest way, become a partner, great. Now, I do not know how big this form is, right? Now, this form is going to take me 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Set expectations first, even if you want to use Typeform as an external. I would have loved to quickly get some details in and then maybe have like a 2-layered form, right? Test that out. Replace this request a demo, just get me to fill a time. If I want a demo, I don't want to be filling too much of forms, right? Huge amount of for sure, there's going to be huge amount of drop-offs here. I personally have done this mistake in my previous company when I was to just create landing pages and used to have massive dropouts if I was to just redirect somebody to a Google form and type form and all of that. So cut this out completely. One of the thing that we're going to cover in marketing probably in Feb session is like USP and UVPs, right? Like what is a unique value proposition? What is the unique selling point? Now, if I go to knife.io, it's a global public edge cloud to make faster internet experience. I do not know what that means. Now, to be honest, I'm a little tech savvy, but I do not know what it means. So you have to be a little bit more precise and clear, like what you want people to do. What are you building? What is it for? Who is it for? And kind of a thing, and test that out a little. But those are just some initial thoughts. This is a great landing page. I just didn't see enough material to build trust, like backed by NetApp. Okay, I do recognize maybe, if your prospects don't even know about these logos, that's fine. But backed by Antler, I know that you are more trustworthy, but like from a prospect's perspective, if you want to get them to take action, just get rid of anything that's very, very going to create some frictions. But that's the first thing that you should do. I haven't seen your blog, but like it looks like you have a lot of things. Just do a quick analysis on like on-page SEO to begin with. That's something that I can think about. You have a lot of blogs, but I'm not sure if this is driving traffic. Now, one of the early stage mistakes, I don't want to see this, right? This is stopping a lot of your search engine results pages for sure, and that's what I expected this page to give me. it's not going to be searched very, very effectively. So you ask me, like, people aren't able to find your page, they'll not be able to find your page. So you need to fix some of these. So these are some quick things that I can think of, either just by looking at this. We'll take this last question, and just in the interest of time, I'm going to complete the rest of the session before we get into Q&A. A-Shield for outbound B2B sales, how many touch points should an outreach sequence have? It's very broad, Siddharth. You'll have to experiment. So if you're using tools like a drip campaign, anything CRM plus a sequence, a drip campaign tool, I would say start with 2, 3 max. I think in a drip campaign, that's what I've learned from our sales teams is like, give them like a exit option, right? A lot of times we want people to book time with us. We want them to take a quick action, respond back. What if I don't want to do that, right? What if I just want to read a piece of article, something to educate me rather than having to book time? Because I know if I book time with you, like that's going to mean sales, and maybe I'm just not prepared to have that conversation. So test out some of those things and see if that works well for you. I'm going to stop screen share, get back quickly to a slide so we can get on. Okay, but these are really good questions. We might not be able to get to every of this, but I hope we can get to most of it. So if you can see my screen, we're going to move to the other half of today's session. Typically, it's going to be very, very practical as well. You can ask questions, so feel free to do that. I'm going to go into full screen. But I'm going to just, move into a little bit of like, how do you set up? You've learned a little bit about inbound sales processes. You have some questions, but I'm going to lean into more practical avenues of like, how do you really generate better revenues? Like if you have a better process, Anna helped us, go through some of the best practices over there. But how do you get, better by using tools, technologies to get your end goal? Can we have the first poll, Vinay? So we have a quick poll. Just want to get a sense of how many people actually use CRMs to empower their sales processes. Oops.
Folks, you'll be seeing the poll questions on your screen. We will give you like 15 seconds.
Yeah. So people can just quickly get ahead, and we have like we have 84 people on this call. So we'll wait for at least 35, 40 people to just get a good sense. And also to get a sense of like, where are you when you think about tech stack? So that's the other half of this session is like, we just want to help you think through holistically while you're thinking about building a sales and marketing tech stack, and where do you stand over there? Okay, perfect. So we've got a good amount of responses. Almost 50% of the people use, 50% of the people don't use a CRM, which is absolutely okay. So you just want to get a feel of what this looks like with this audience. All right. So I'm going to just get into the basics. Okay, for the folks who use a CRM, and this could be something, maybe something that's not been posed to you earlier and so on. Because you use a CRM, and that's your source of truth. After using the CRM, no matter whatever you're using, do you think you're making better revenues? Just say yes or no in the chat. And thanks for the poll, Vinay. Post implementation of CRM, do you see your revenues going up? And it's a combination of things, right? It's not that you just got a CRM XYZ and your revenues are just going to shoot through the roof. No, it doesn't work that way. But do you have a better visibility into your revenues now, and you think that they're going up? You're doing XYZ. So 2 people guessed, Philip and Rishikesh. A lot of people said they're using CRM. So I'd definitely love to get some more responses. Okay, perfect. So a lot of people are seeing that. Exactly. The fundamental reasons that you're putting some of these tools, processes into action is really to see, like, are you driving net value up that chain, right? Like, are you getting more revenues, closing more deals? Do you have a better visibility into all of that? And fundamentally, that's one of the fundamental reasons, like, why I'd highly encourage people to get a little bit serious about using a source of truth. That source of truth, to be honest, cannot be on a Google sheet. Like, we still see a lot of growth stage companies, Series A companies do that, but I don't think it's very, very sustainable. So I'd say, as early as you can get into best practice. There's tons of free tools out there. HubSpot has a free CRM. There's tons of things. Pick up something, get a hang of it, and go from there. Because that's really something that's going to help you drive net benefits in the time to come. This is just a screenshot of what it looks like inside my CRM, but I use that effectively just to get a sense of where people are in the buyer's journey, what leads do I want to call. Having that sense of understanding is super crucial before you start talking to the next person. So if anybody over here has asked questions like why are my deals not moving and so on, if you'd ask me that question, I'd have to go back to something, because if I ask you that question back, you can't go back to a Google sheet and ask for answers, right? So think about from that perspective that most of your answers are somewhere in the source of truth. You can go back and look at the data and be able to answer some of that. And thinking about some of those best practices. It also helps you manage your deal pipelines a lot more effectively, right? So getting back to your, let's say you're doing a next fundraise, what is your sales pipeline looking like? Like you have a better predicament of forecasting your revenues better and a lot of other things. So that's fundamentally, I can't make the slides larger. Probably you'll have to just double click, Shilpa, because I hope my screen is visible to most people. But fundamentally, you just get a better visibility into what's happening on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in your teams, whether you run quarterly and so on. The one thing that I'd say is also through automation, right? So a lot of people miss out on automation. Is anybody using sales automation? And can you help me understand what kind of sales automation are you using? Anybody just voluntarily? If you're using automation in your sales processes, just let us know and we all can learn what kind of automation are you using, so that you don't have to put in manual effort behind those things. So even if it's prospecting, if you're automating it, email campaigns, great example. So Eric, if you're automating email campaigns. Anybody else who's automating the sales processes? Some examples that I'll give you that I've seen best practice from other startups is simple things, right? For example, automating booking of meetings, right? You have G Calendar, you can attach it to your CRM, just get meetings booked. You don't want to be getting into meetings back and forth on email. It wastes a huge amount of time, and you just want to be very, very careful about it. Webinars, yeah, that's a really good use case. You can get Zoom to speak to your CRMs. You can automate a lot of that functioning, which definitely can be super helpful over there. So automation, literally it can come in different flavors, but drip campaigns, sequences. At HubSpot we call them sequences, but generally drip campaigns. You send out email number 1, nobody responds or doesn't take an action. Email number 2 can go out and things like that. So just having those best practices in place will go a long way. I want to get one pulse check but I'm sure that a lot of people are sending emails and a lot of people said they're automating as well. Just to yes or no in the chat. How many people use MailChimp or other email marketing software, but do not use a CRM at the back of it? So just say yes. If you do use an CRM plus email marketing, just say no. Okay, a few yeses, few nos. How about the rest? You use an email marketing software, but no CRM at the back. Okay. So for people who all those who say no, thanks for volunteering. Fundamentally, your email marketing campaigns are going to see very, very poor results. I would say very poor results, to be honest, because you lack customers' journey, segmentation, a lot of that important items that really sits at the core of your CRM. So when you think about why isn't my campaigns working, or why aren't my sales team's emails working fundamentally, you need to ask that question back. Is if I don't have a CRM attached, it cannot give you much visibility. So an email marketing software on its own is literally of no use to me, especially for a B2B company. If you're not just doing one-off campaigns, and I'm sure all of us have to be able to send emails, effective emails, which are not salesy, which are a little bit more personalized and targeted. Because fundamentally, if you look at things today, you have maybe sales number 1 in your team, or maybe that's the 10 salesperson or the 15 salesperson as you grow and scale. that is going to be your best friend in terms of communication, whether even if you add that WhatsApp channel and other things, but email is fundamentally going to be there for a long time to come. So you need to just get better at it day by day. And you need to be able to feed data to your teams and make their lives easier. So, that combination just goes hand in hand. It's more like a set in stone. Okay. Stop using email marketing tools with no CRM attached. Okay. If you have any questions, or if you just want to understand more, just put that question in the chat. And these are what I call disaster recipes, because you don't have segmentations, you don't have customer journey. Essentially, you want to be able to empower your sales team. The reason you're setting up a better process, maybe it's inbound, a mix of inbound plus outbound plus tools, is the fundamental core reason, right? And that's your end goal. So your end goal is to go from maybe $10,000 in revenue to $50,000. It's just not going to happen in the next 1 month. Maybe it's going to take 3 months for you to get there. It's going to come with some best practices, mix and match of processes, and also implementing, better processes on how you target people and so on. So that's going to be very, very fundamental to what you do. Segmenting, like some people said, I do have visibility into who my hot leads are. Similarly, you need, like for your sales teams, you want to be able to get up on a Monday morning, look at who the tofu is, who's an upselling list, who's a prospect hot list, and so on. How many people have this? How many people feel good about seeing this on a Monday morning? That you're calling or you're sending email to these people, and the person who's going to receive your email is going to feel good about it. It's that important. Like fundamentally, I think when you start prospecting, when you start sending out emails, whether that's in 5, 10, 500 emails, like you want to be cautious about that inbox, right? Because that also hurts your reputation in many ways. So if you feel confident, say yes in the chat. If you don't, that's okay. You can improvise after you go back today. Just say no. Do you feel good about segmentation and you have a lot of confidence about this? Just say a yes or a no. Yeah, nobody's judging. We just want to get a sense of like how confident people are. Nobody? So okay, so we'll keep moving on. Okay, so Goyam, great. Mohan, no. Fair enough. Definitely give it to you guys for volunteering quickly and saying, you're not confident, but you can definitely get better. Vijeta has a question. Email subject line is super important in pointers. Yeah, I'd say email subject line totally, right? So if you're using drip campaigns, for example, Vijeta, if you're using a tool, let's say you're using a CRM tool, you're sending out drip campaigns or sequences for folks if you're using HubSpot and so on. You typically, you should definitely do A/B testing, right? On these campaigns, and you can look at, I've been A/B testing a lot on my drip campaigns, like how can I make my subject lines better, right? It also comes with, a bunch of experiments. Sometimes you can try the salesy one, sometimes you can try things that are very helpful, I think, right? Today I sent an email to a bunch of startups, for example, that did not get access to a startup program. And I said, look, I want to help you generate more revenues. Simple. And my email was not more than 2 paragraphs. I think the open rate was about 72%. I've never seen that. So, these tweaks and pointers about, and they also speak emotionally to your audience. So you just have to be a little bit more experimental in nature as to who are you reaching out to, what's the context. And then, of course, your body of the email also has to play homogeneous kind of a thing with your subject line. Your subject line is very interesting, but your body is very salesy. Like I'm just going to either unsubscribe or delete that email, right? There's only 2 things, and you're going to create more friction. So you get the point. I know we might be up in time, but these are something that you just have to keep in mind. And when you're building out automation, that's when, thanks Anna for popping that in. That's when you can use all of this information and really get to the crux of it. Automating follow-ups, different ways of doing it. Let's say somebody looked at your pricing page on your website. Now, if your CRM is capturing the data, you can use that to build an audience segmentation inside your CRM, and then give that to your sales team. So when Aditya comes on a Monday morning, XYZ, who do I reach out to? I have a list prepared because the last few weeks, my system is just helping me, get those warm leads or hot leads. Everybody who's looked at my pricing page. Now that's amazing because I can be better at doing my job as a sales rep of crafting better emails. So fundamentally, you as a founder or early stage member, whatever, you want to be empowering people with data, insights, and tools to just get things flowing in the right direction, and then measure over time to get things going. I'm going to skip some of these, but we're going to just open up for questions. I think we do have time. We can spend another 15 minutes for folks who are interested, and we really want to get into anything, ask more questions over here. But my slides are over. I've got a few more slides, but I'm not going to be. We just open up for Q&A. The other slides that I have is on building a tech stack. So I'm happy to answer questions on how you should build a better tech stack on sales marketing. Any questions on tools to use for website, and Anna is here as well. I'm happy to answer every question. WordPress versus Webflow, or WordPress versus HTML, or why not use a developer's time? Anything that can impact your sales, get that answered. Because when you go back, you want to be implementing some best practices and seeing that you can improvise revenues and so on. So I'll open it up for questions for anybody.
Thanks, Ratan, Anna, and Aditya. Before we go to the next set of questions, there were a lot of takeaways that you had shared. I thought I would quickly summarize some of them. In fact, you mentioned better product era versus a better customer era, the flywheel free of friction. That was something that was shared by a lot of investors as well, who mentioned that the red flag for them was excessive product focus versus instead of customer focus. So even investors look at customer first. Thanks for sharing the inbound sales strategy, the 4 phases, and the GPCT framework. And also important that you touched upon the emails that need to be connected to the CRM. And Vijeta also mentioned about the subject lines. So yeah, I think profound takeaways. We'll be happy to share the post-event video and other links with our members. I also see that Nida volunteered to share about our company. She's in fact in Singapore as well. So we do have our audience joining in from all over the world too. So great. I think so now the audience would be able to unmute themselves, raise their hands, and ask questions too. So we'll keep this a lot more interactive now.
So yeah, if somebody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, I'll give you priority over the questions coming over here. Nobody? No, seriously, you do have priority of asking questions. I'm not going to take questions from the chat for some time. So if you're going to unmute yourself and ask a question, please take this time and do that. Nobody?
Yeah, you want Aditya? I have a question. Rather,
Sure.
that we are doing this as a series, right, buddy? So, what do you think could be something interesting? You want to give a teaser to the audience because we want them to come back. We want them to learn. See, we learn a lot. I just want to take 10 more seconds on this. So, how do I know Aditya? So, we met 2.5 years back in Bangalore, Aditya, if you remember, at a physical panel, etc., etc. Then Aditya dropped into the, to our office at TiE Bangalore. We met, and then we've been in touch on mail, and he has been coming and doing a lot of activities, interacting with our founders, doing these very beautiful learning sessions. So it's a friendship, it's a relationship, it's something that is built over time, right? And this is what I think people should learn. Take the time and effort to ask questions, interact, engage, because that makes all the difference. With that, please, this is a fantastic opportunity to talk to really good folks. So to the audience, do not be shy, open up, talk, chat. And Aditya, what else are we going to be hearing from you over the next series is what I would also like to know from you. Okay?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll wrap up with the question, and I'll definitely give a sense of what